Today, there are 2 million descendants of French-Canadian immigrants living in New England. These are our stories. Welcome to the French-Canadian Legacy Podcast.
Venez tous jeunes filles et garçons, je vais vous raconter l'histoire de notre immigration ici au USA, de grands aventuriers, de pays étrangers.
Bonjour everyone, this is Melody and we're back with French-Canadian news. We'll start with an article from the Globe and Mail titled, A Franco-American's Fight for His French Soul. This is the story of Remi Francoeur, a Franco-American from Manchester, New Hampshire, who moved to Montreal 7 years ago to live in the French language every day. Check out his story to learn more about why he found home in Quebec. Next up, we have an article from La Presse titled, The Strange Fate of Urbain Ledoux. In this article, we learn about Ledoux, an immigrant from Quebec who settled in Maine. Through his activism and diplomatic work, Ledoux became well known in the American mainstream at the turn of the 1920s. Learn more about this interesting historical character and catch a quote from Patrick Lacroix, who included Ledoux in his book, Tout ne serait possible, une histoire politique de Franco-Américaine. And of course, please also check out Lacroix's book. Speaking of Lacroix, check out the latest posts on his blog, Query the Past. In one post titled, A Vindication of Franco-Americans, learn about some Franco-American parish history and the story of one priest attempting to uphold the dignity of French Canadians who had left Quebec for the United States. In Winter Carnivals of French Canada, learn about the history of French Canadian winter carnivals, from the first event to activities and more. In Histoire des Franco-Américains un Serval, check out this overview of Franco-American history en français. In other news, the Gendron Franco Center in Lewiston, Maine has rebranded under a new name, Riverfront Performing Arts and Events, founded by Franco-Americans. Founded in 2000, the then-named Gendron Franco Center is a performing arts organization that celebrates Franco-American heritage and culture and the cultures of others from places around the world. Are you from Lewiston? What do you think of the name change? Pinky D's Poutine Factory in Lewiston, Auburn will be closing this year. In a statement posted to Facebook on January 9th, founder Randy Smith said they would officially close on February 28th. The Pinky D's family would like to say a heartfelt thank you to all of our loyal patrons, friends, and family for supporting our restaurant for the last half-decade. The Poutine Factory has proudly served the Lewiston Auburn community, providing a classic Canadian meal at a fair price. Now, as our lease expires, it is with a heavy heart that we announce the closure of the Poutine Factory restaurant, effective February 28th, 2023. The people of LA welcomed us with open arms, and for that I will be forever grateful. Check out the full statement on the Pinky D's Facebook page. There's a new episode of Franco Foods on YouTube. Join Natalie of the New Hampshire Franco-American Center as she cooks a holiday favorite of Quebecois and Franco-Americans, tortilla, in the episode titled Taste of Quebec, Tortilla Extravaganza, 3 types of pork pies. You won't want to miss this episode. Last week, I had an exciting announcement. The Museum of Work and Culture has invited me to give a virtual Valley Talk presentation. We'll look at French-Canadian folklore and discuss how it could apply to Franco-Americans today. Check out the link to register for the Museum of Work and Culture's Valley Talk, Visualizing Franco-American Culture Through French-Canadian Folklore. The presentation is on March 5th at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time, but register as soon as possible to secure your spot, and I'll see you this spring. Moving on to podcasts, the North American Francophone podcast is back with 2 new episodes, hosted by Dr. Claire-Marie Bresson. Check out her conversation with Dr. Patrick Lataga and Dr. James Natis, hosts of the Récits Francophones à Coeur de l'Amérique podcast. And then check out Bresson's conversation with Dr. Pierre Lavaux and his book, 1000 après 1000, Célébrités et Migration dans le Nord-Américain, that talks about celebrities, migration, and Franco-American culture. And now on to events. On February 4th, from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m., join the Franco-American Center for a Mardi Gras party at the Alpine Club in Manchester, New Hampshire. Tickets for members are $25, tickets for non-members are $20, and tickets for 2022 volunteers are $15. On February 7th, from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m., check out Pret a Parler in person at Murphy's Tap Room in Bedford, New Hampshire. All levels of French are welcome to join. That's all I've got for you this time. Everything I've covered today will be linked in the French-Canadian Legacy podcast episode description. Merci for listening.
Thanks, Melody. And for next week's episode, and I got to tell you, it is exciting to be able to say that after our little break. I hope everybody had themselves a really nice holiday season. But for next week's episode, we are talking with Dr. James Natsis and Dr. Patrick Latenga. They are the two hosts of a fairly recent podcast, a really fun podcast, Récits Francophones au Coeur de l'Amérique. That's the name of their podcast. It talks about Francophones in the heart of America. So they actually come from the podcast is broadcast from Louisville, Kentucky, and they talk about all kinds of various topics related to French, and it is in French, their podcast. I actually had the opportunity as one of the very few, not one of the many episodes, but one of the few episodes I have done in French. I was a guest on their episode, so it was really cool to be able to talk to them and their project and kind of what they both have incredibly unique, very fascinating backgrounds. How they ended up together talking in French on a podcast coming out of Louisville, Kentucky. So next week, Dr. James Natsis, Dr. Patrick Latenga, the Récits Francophones au Coeur de l'Amérique. Big starting right away, Patrick.
Yeah.
First of all, I was a little disappointed. I saw you got your PhD in Washington, D.C., so I did some looking. I saw it was American University, which is kind of a bummer because I'm a George Washington University guy myself. But I'll let that
I saw that. I saw that on your resume.
but that's it. But I did want to note, so you currently teach University of Louisville. You got your undergraduate degree from the University of Kentucky. Now, when the two play basketball against each other, are you wearing red or blue is my question.
I'm wearing red and blue because my spouse went to Louisville, so I can't disappoint her. So I have to wear both colors. But just a rectification, I was an adjunct at Louisville. My assignment ended in December. Now I'm a full assistant professor at Eastern Kentucky University.
And by the way, at this very moment, UK and U of L are playing basketball. There's a game at Rupp Arena right now.
As we're recording this episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that. I'm like, I bet that could be an issue a couple times a year. But no, that's fair. That's
well,
awesome.
when the home team is 2-11 or whatever, it's like, whatever.
Yeah.
I guess that makes it easier.
Yeah,
for sure.
Now our fathers look at us and sigh with despair, to think that everything they love we simply do not share. But the spirit never dies, our culture will survive. Each of us must choose how much to keep alive. Each of us must choose how much to keep alive.
Special thanks to Josie Vachon for providing the music. You can find more about her at josievachon.com. This podcast was produced and edited by Mike Campbell. If you have any questions or comments, please email us at fclpodcast@gmail.com. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at FCL Podcast for more information about the topics discussed. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe and leave us a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to this episode.